All right, y'all. Happy Money Monday. Today we're going to cover a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because it's so freaking frustrating. We're going to talk about the wealth gap today. So, as a black woman, I'm going to specifically focus on the black and white wealth gap. But yes, there is a gap between each race, and I will post a link to one of the main sites that I used when I was doing a little bit of quick research for this, so you can see the other races if you so desire. But I'm going to focus on the black and white gap. So the wealth gap, I feel like it's one of those things everybody knows about it, but doesn't really talk about it that much. And there's a lot of racism around it and just obnoxious thinking around where the wealth gap comes from. So I want to cover some of those points. So white families' median wealth, this is as of 2024, is $287,000. So they have 85%. This is out of all the families in America, they have 85% of the total household wealth, while only making up 66% of the households. So white people are 66% of households. They hold 85% of household wealth. So we already see the gap right there. That's between them and everybody else. And then we have a black family's median wealth is, drumroll please, $45,000. 45 versus 287. What the, like, ugh. Thankfully, that's up 66% from 2019, but it's still obviously very terrible, and it's not really catching up with white people at all. It's just better than what it used to be. But the difference between the gaps is 47,000 higher. So there was actually less of a gap back in 2019. There was less of a gap between black and white families than there is now. The gap is 47,000 more this year in 2024 than it was in 2019. It was only 242. Yeah, or it's 242. Oh, the gap between is 242,000 now between black and white families, and it was not that big of a gap back in 2019. So we gotta address this, y'all. Like, what is going on? So one of the reasons why I became a new coach now, is because it does make sense because we have historical reasons. So fortunately, that site was truthful and honest about why there is a gap, because it was due to historical practices such as redlining and unfairly denying black families access to loans and property and all the things that white people kind of like took for granted that they were able to get. We didn't get all that stuff, and so it's really hard to try to play catch up when you had all these systems that were opposed to you. And unfortunately, still to this day, there's still issues with some of these systems. It's still in the system, and although thankfully it's easier to maneuver around today, there's some stuff. So I feel like I want to address a specific cause that's unrelated to those things, because I do also believe a lack of education is the other biggest factor in why black families are so far behind in accumulating wealth. So even just in my community, my family, like, thankfully, most of my family is doing pretty well. Like, I feel like I have a lot of military people in my family, and so they did well off of like military benefits. I have no idea what any of their net worths are. I don't think we have anybody that's really rich, but we don't really have anybody that's struggling as far as I know. Everybody seems to be homeowners and whatnot. But I feel like the education around building wealth, like, I don't know anybody in my family that's like ambitious or that has tried to accumulate wealth as far as I know. And I feel like black people as a community, we tend to kind of like follow the status quo a little bit. Like, get a job, get a career that pays you benefits, and some of us take one extreme to get more wealth, but it's usually for status symbols. And so I feel like we have a psychological component where, because of our past history of being looked down on and not able to get the nice things and not able to be like, oh, they're uppity, not be like, not have like the fancier, finer things. I feel like there's a degree of overcompensation where even when Black people do acquire some degree of wealth or any like large sums of money, there is sometimes a propensity towards wasting it on like flashy spending and just like status spending and like, having the nice car, having like the really fancy shoes that are like $700 for no damn reason. For example, I visit one of my clients' houses twice a week for sessions. And there's a guy in that neighborhood. It's a pretty well off, mostly Black neighborhood with it's like all nice houses. But there's a guy in that neighborhood that has like 3 freaking cars and this little ass, like they can't even all fit in the driveway. Like there's one in the garage and then there's like 2 on the street, and he is out there polishing the hell out of them almost every time I'm over there. He's got like a Porsche and like a bright red, one of those fancy like race cars. I don't even remember what kind of car it is. And then the other one, whatever name brand car, just name one of the fancy name brand cars that's on the same level as a Porsche or whatever. Just a little sporty black thing. But yeah, you can tell he takes so much pride in these 3 cars, and they're like all his. And I only ever see, I don't see anybody else going in and out of that house. I know he's like married, has a wife. And I'm like, this is like the highlight of his life is having these 3 cars. Like, this is just me observing. And like, no judgment. I'm glad he's doing well. That's great. But I'm like, how much of that could have been put towards building generational wealth for like your, for your children, maybe your grandchildren? Like, I mean, are they gonna like get these cars later? Maybe, I don't know, but I see this and I'm like, okay, was it really necessary? And like, granted, I could be completely off base. Maybe he does have all that stuff set up and I just don't know. But I know that, just objectively speaking, Black people overall do have a high tendency, because of that trauma, to like show our worth physically. And if I haven't learned anything from all the financial literacy books I've been reading, is that the people that truly have wealth are not buying shit like that. Sorry, excuse my language. Are not buying stuff like that. The people that truly have wealth, they're like accumulating in these tax-free accounts that they're able to have estates left over for children and grandchildren. And like what Black people have this really big thing on like generational wealth, build generational wealth. And like, especially in the polyamorous community, like they're real excited about talking about, oh yeah, have a bigger family, like have like, 2 wives instead of 1. It's like, 'cause 3 people, we're going to make more money and we're going to build that generational wealth. And I see so many times this talk of generational wealth, but it's like, I'm not seeing it in practice of building the generational wealth. It's like, I feel like we have to really sit and think of like, what do we define wealth as? Is it having 3 name brand cars and like all the shoes and Gucci bags that you want? Or is it more subtle and like The Millionaire Next Door? Excellent book, I highly recommend. The Millionaire Next Door. They're so low key and they're so frugal and they're wealthy because they're living below their means. They're not flashy. They're not showing off. Like, yeah, you can be flashy and show off, but it's like, what are the priorities? Is your priority to build the wealth so that you can afford to be flashy and show off? Or is your priority just to be flashy and show off and look like you have wealth? Because there is a difference between being a high earner and looking like you have wealth because you make a lot of money, but then you spend it immediately so you don't accumulate anything, and being an accumulator of wealth where you don't even have to be a high earner. There's a freaking janitor that he just lived in the same tiny ass house, like, not saying that you should do that, but he lived in the same house his whole life, was very unassuming, he lived below his means, he put his money faithfully into his retirement accounts. And by the time he passed away, he had a legacy of $8 million to leave on that he had it all like going where he wanted it to go when he passed. He literally was just saving for the generations after him, and he didn't even use any of that money himself. Now, do I agree with that part? I mean, I think you should enjoy your wealth for yourself as well, but I also think that idea that he had to, like, he had his charities, his church, like whatever is important to you, do you want that to do well after you're gone? Like, do you want to be able to contribute to something greater than yourself? And if so, what is the education, like, how do you handle your money so that you can get there? So that's my biggest thing. It's just like education in our community is severely lacking. It's not taught in schools. I'm sure that's intentional. So I'm out here, like, I genuinely want everybody to come up as a group. Like, maybe not the people that are already at the top. They can, like, stay. They can, they can, whatever. They just need to be reasonable and not be blocking anybody anymore. Fingers crossed. But anyways, we need to come up, and we need to also have that mindset of learning about money, learning how to use money, learning how to put it away, learning how to prioritize what is actually important to you. What are your values? What do you like? Not basing your self-worth on externally, like, do I look like I have money, but what do you genuinely care about? Is it your family? Is it making a difference? I mean, I know I would love to, as soon as I'm able, start a financial literacy camp for children for ages whenever they're old enough to start learning about money. I don't know, freaking 10 to 18, maybe 12, maybe at least at puberty, I don't know. Like, when do they start making those lemonade stands? As soon as they're able to start making money and learning about money, I want to get in there, because I feel like, to me, that's how you truly build generational wealth, is teaching the children. Because once you get to a certain point and your mindset is already, my mindset when I was young, I was like, yeah, I want to make money. And I kind of always saw myself, like, figuring out how to eventually get there, but I had to go through so much mindset stuff and, like, grow as an adult and learn so much. And it's just like, we could have skipped all that process that I had to do myself, and I had to, like, really figure it out and look into it. If I had just been taught to begin with when I was young, I would already be a millionaire, like, right now. I guarantee you, because I've done surprisingly well considering I wasn't taught. So, considering I didn't get any of that information, I still managed to, like, figure it out. But how much later? We have people figuring it out at 17 and 18, and they're millionaires by the time they're 21. Black children should have that. I'm unequivocally not ashamed. Come at me, bruh. Like, black children should be millionaires by the time they're 21. There's no reason for them not to be. Like, we literally, we know how to get around those, like, racist systemic stuff now. Like, I know it's still out there and it still exists, especially, like, for certain industries, but I know, me personally, and, like, many other black people that are doing well, that are financially successful, and we're, like, trying to bring everybody up, a lot of it is the education. Like, we know how to do things, and it's like, they're not restricting people. Like, nobody can restrict you from investing your money. Nobody can restrict you from starting a business, or, like, it's easy to get around that and sue the hell out of them and make even more money if someone is being obviously discriminatory these days. It's so much easier to get around it. So I've been fortunate that every time I've run across, like, people that were racist employers or anything, thank you for letting me know that you're racist, so I can go to a business that's going to pay me even more money, because they're not racist, and they, like, they see the value of diversity, and I would have made less money at your stanky little white racist business anyway. So it's like, we have that resilience, I feel, built up now at this point, where we don't have to play their game anymore. We don't have to deal with their BS. Like, and we need to build that wealth so that we can change those systems, because they're not going to do it. They're comfortable. They don't freaking care. That's the other thing. It's like, we need to all really be intentional about being wealthy and building wealth, because that's also where the power is. They're only able to have this much control for this long because they had all this wealth and this power, and, like, can do all this lobbying and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine if the wealth was actually distributed proportionately and black families had 11% of the total wealth? In fact, let me see. Can I do that math really quick? If we had 11% of the total, let's see, it's like something trillion. Damn it, I can't figure out the math right now because I would have to get the total wealth of all families, and it's like some trillion something dollars. But let's just say if our net worth average was also 300,000, can you imagine black families having a median? That's the median net worth of $300,000. How much more we can? And you know, I know people have probably also heard our spending power. We have like billions of dollars of spending power. And that's what really pisses me off, because we have so much spending power, but we're using it to spend instead of accumulate wealth. Like, we have so much power in our dollars, y'all. So much power in our dollars. All right, so this one was more of like a soapbox rant today. Hopefully some of y'all were feeling that soapbox rant vibe, and and yeah, I'm gonna end it right there. But please feel free to add any comments or thoughts, anything that I left out on the wealth gap and the racial disparities. And yeah, if you want to close that gap, type in "close the freaking gap." That's gonna be like my hashtag for today. Close the damn gap. All right, y'all. Peace out. Make that wealth. Make that money. All that good stuff.